Hi there, I'm Cathi Barker from Software Solutions. You're looking at one of a series of videos concerning the essential skills we need when working with Excel. This particular video is going to look at the formatting aspects of Excel. I'm using the sheet called Formatting, which is in the file Excel1 that comes with your courseware. The sheet called Formatting has got a series of instructions in the grey cells in column A. And these instructions are pointing you towards the most common formatting options Excel users typically use in Excel. So the first instruction says apply the font Times New Roman to the range B3 to D3. So I start by selecting B3 across to D3. The font, if I rest on various buttons, this is font color, this is font fill color, this is font size, and ultimately you'll find a button called font. The font is currently set to Arial and it wants us to apply the font Times New Roman. So you click the drop down where you see a whole lot of fonts and you type TI to drill down to those fonts beginning with TI. And at the bottom of the list you'll be able to select Times New Roman. So we've applied the font Times New Roman to the range B3 to D3. The next instruction says apply the font size 14 to B4 to D4. So we select from B4 across to the right to D4. We rest on various buttons and we see font color and we see grow font size, but here's the actual font size itself. And the font size is currently set to 10 and it wants us to choose 14. So we simply select that number. You can grow fonts just by hitting this button and shrink fonts by hitting this button. But when you want an exact specific size, you can select it from the drop down. The next instruction says apply bold to B5 to D5. Now instead of using my mouse, I'm going to start selecting the cells using the shift and the arrow keys. I click on B5, I hold the shift and I tap the right arrow twice, and that selects the two cells to the right. To apply bold, we've got this button here with a B on it. I can click this button to turn the bold on. I can also click the same button to turn the bold off. So in most cases in Excel, the button that you clicked to turn something on is also the button that you click to turn something off. They call this a toggle. But notice when I rest on the button that has a B on it, that it mentions the shortcut key combination Control B. So you may want to start using some of the shortcut keys if you already knew that this was the bold button, but you didn't know there was a shortcut key. Control B turns the bold on. Oops. Control B makes it stand out more, and Control B turns the bold off. So I'm going to press Control B and turn the bold on. I'll then hit the down arrow, which will take me to B6. And it says apply italics to the range B6 to D6. So I hold the shift and I press the right arrow twice. To apply italics, I could go Control I, that turns the italics on, and Control I turns the italics off. And italics is basically a slopey look to your text. If you don't want to use the shortcut key, I can go for this button, which has got an I on it and is called italics and mentions Control I as the shortcut key. So I'll click this button. I'll hit the down arrow, which will take me to B7, and I'll look at the next instruction. Apply underline to the range B7 to D7. I'll hold the shift and press the right arrow twice, and I want to apply underline. I could go Control U to underline and Control U to not underline. Or I can use this button, Control U is mentioned, this is underline, but also there's a drop down, which means that you can choose single underline or double underline. I'm just going to choose underline. So far we've learnt Control B is bold, Control I is italics, and Control U is underline. And you also need to select the cells before you format them. And we can use our mouse or we can use the shift arrow keys. All right, let's press down arrow. It says that it wants you to left align B8 to D8. So I'm going to shift right arrow. I can see at the moment that that text Thursday, Friday, Saturday is actually centered in their cells. If we're to left align, then we go up to here where we see this group of buttons. Align left, align center, which is currently looking like it's on, and align right. We need a line left, so I'll click the first of these three buttons and it left aligns that text. I'll hit the down arrow, shift right arrow, and now it wants you to center B9 to D9, so this is the center button here. The next instruction is to right align B10 to D10. I down arrow to B10, I shift right arrow to D10, and then I simply click this button, which is align right. I arrow down to B11 and look at the next instruction. The next instruction says to merge and center the text across the range B11 to D11. So I shift right arrow, so I've selected B11 to D11, and up here is a button called Merge and Center. If you click this button, as it says, you'll combine and center the contents of the selected cells into a new, larger cell. So if I click that, it centers across cells instead of centering in a cell. And what was 3 cells is now one larger cell. I can click the same button to unmerge and the same button to remerge. I'll press the down arrow to D12, shift right arrow, and now it wants us to apply a currency style. Now currency is money, so I'm tempted to go to this button here, but this actually says accounting. So that's not exactly currency. So I'll have to go to this drop down, and instead of accounting, I choose currency. Now currency puts the dollar close to the number, whereas accounting doesn't. If I choose accounting, the dollar is actually further away from the number, and some people prefer that. If I hit this drop down, you can also choose things like the pound or the euro or the Swiss franc. So you've got different types of currencies here. But I'm just going to go as it instructs me to currency. I'll press the down arrow, which takes me to B13, and it says apply the percent style to the range B13 to D13. So I hold the shift key and I hit the right arrow twice. And here is a percent button, which allows me to quickly apply the percent style. Notice it mentions the shortcut key is Control-Shift-%. That multiplies each of those 3 figures by 100 and sticks a percent symbol on the end. If I hit the down arrow, I can then select the next 3 cells, and this says apply a comma style. That's this button here, which puts a comma every thousandth and gives you 2 decimal places and a decimal point. If I hit the down arrow and then shift right arrow to select the next 3 cells, it says increase the decimal places to 4. So this button here, when I rest on it, is increase decimals. And if I click it 1, 2, 3 times, I get 4 decimal places. If I hit the down arrow and then shift right arrow, this one says decrease the decimal places to 0. So up here on the home tab in the ribbon, this is the decrease decimal button. I click it once, twice, and now I've got 0 or no decimal places. If I down arrow to B17, the next instruction says please increase the indent. So I select these 3 cells and I want to use this button to increase the indent. And that is to move the content further away from the left border. Each time I click it, it goes further and further to the right, and this one brings it back. Under no circumstances should we ever go space, 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 space to indent something. When we want to indent something, we should use the increase indent. You'll not always have success by going space, 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 trying to line things up. So it's not considered good practice. The next group of cells, if I down arrow and shift right arrow, it wants you to decrease the indent. So I just click this button and it pushes it back. Let me give you an example. So for example, if I had a heading called assets and under that was plant, equipment and cash. And then we had another sort of heading called total assets. I really need to indent these 3 topics here because they belong under assets. And instead of going space, space, space in front of each of those items, we actually just hit the increase indent button. And that pushes them in and maybe a little bit further in. And that looks way more professional as far as creating an outline structure where some things are indented and some things are not. So that's what those two buttons do, decrease indent and increase indent. The next instruction, which is row 19, is to apply a double bottom border to the range B19 to D19. Borders is this button here, and if you hit the drop down, you've got all sorts of borders. You could just have a single bottom border, or you could have a double bottom border, or you could have a top and a bottom, or you could have a top and a thick bottom. There's all sorts of different options. So I'm just going for a double bottom border, which I really can't see until I click away from those cells, and now I can see there's a double line under each of those numbers. So the interesting thing is borders actually underline cells, whereas underline underlines words. So here where we applied the underline, it only underlines words. If you want to put a line across an entire cell, then you need to use borders. The next thing is to apply a background color to each one of these. So the bucket is called fill color, and I'm going to choose a red option. And then I'm going to choose a yellow option, and I'm going to choose a grey option. So that's your background colour. Whereas here we want text colour, which is this A and is called font colour. Red, green font colour, and a blue font colour. So that's those two buttons. Now here we have something called Superscript. I always say to the kids, Superscript's like Superman, it lifts something up. So in this case, we're wanting to lift up the O on the right of the 90, lift it up so it looks like a degree symbol. In Excel, you double click a cell, you drag over the O to select it, you then right click and go into Format Cells, and you choose the option Superscript. When you go OK, you've now lifted the O like Superman and it's become a degree symbol. Now that's not the only way to do Superscript. I need to give you a little bit of a background here. If you want to insert a symbol like a degree symbol or squared or cubed, there's a variety of ways you can do this. One way would be to go insert and symbol in the ribbon. And if you do that, you'll find things like degree, squared, cubed, etc. So there's a variety of symbols that you can insert into your spreadsheet using insert symbol. But if you're doing degrees and squared a lot, you may want to use this approach. Alt 0176 gives you degrees. What does that mean? This means this only works if you've got a number pad on your keyboard. You hold the Alt key and you press 0176 and you let the Alt key go, and that will give you a degree symbol. And that works in literally any program. Whereas if I go Alt 0178, then Alt 0178, I get squared. And if I hold the Alt and on the number pad press 0179, I'll get Alt 0179 cubed. But you have to hold the Alt and you have to press the key sequence on your number pad. So if you don't have a number pad, that ain't going to work. If you don't have a number pad, another option to you is the Windows key. The Windows key, and full stop. When you hold the Windows key and press full stop, you'll get emojis and symbols. Windows, full stop. Here are emojis, here are GIFs, and here are emojis, and here are symbols. Ones that I've recently used. Or I can go into the emoji side of this and see all sorts of different types of emojis. Or I can go back and see all different sorts of types of GIFs. Or go back and see all different types of symbols. And here's my most recent, degrees and squared. But there's all sorts of symbols in here that you can choose. Just saw there, degrees Fahrenheit, degrees Celsius. copyright, all sorts of symbols are in here. So if you are using symbols on a regular basis, you may want to choose them in here and they'll become part of your recent list, for example. If I go back, I can also search for degree. And will it find it? No, it's actually just using the GIFs. So you'll have varying success with that as well. So that's just another way that you can insert symbols and emojis. These all work in every single program. So once you learn these in one program, these will work in an email, a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, different ways that you can put symbols in. So personally, I like to go Alt 0178 if I want squared, and so I'd probably put 360 meters squared, or I'll go 400 meters, Alt 0179 if I want cubed. Okay, then we have the next instruction, row 23. Apply a 90-degree orientation to B23 to D23. Now on the Home tab, this button here, AB going up the hill, is called Orientation. And if you click it, you could choose like 45 degrees counterclockwise. Or I could go back in and choose 90 degrees, which is Rotate Text Up. So our text started at 0. We had a look at 45, but we've settled on 90. A really good option if you've got long column headings and then skinny numbers, turn those column headings up on their side so you can bring the columns in and effectively try and get your spreadsheet to print on one page. Another option when you've got exceptionally long headings is to wrap text. Here I can see sale figures F, but I'm not saying sales figure for 1998, which is actually what's in that cell. And I don't want to widen the column. The column can't be any wider than it is, for example, otherwise it won't fit on a page. So one of the options I've got is to select this and simply wrap the text. And wrap text wraps extra long text onto multiple lines so you can see it all. And so wrap text is very popular. If you're into wrap text though, you may decide to go one of two ways. We have got, say, sales figures for 2023 that is wrapped using that. And as we drag it to the right, it might appear on one line, it might appear on 2 lines, or it might even appear on 3 lines, depending on the width of the column. If you want it to appear on 4 lines and always on 4 lines, then I need to show you Alt Enter. When I type sales, don't press Enter because that means go down a cell. Press Alt Enter, which means new line. Figures, oops, Alt Enter 4, Alt Enter 2023. Alt Enter allows you to have multiple lines in one cell, and when you adjust the column width it will always stay on 4 lines, not like this one which can be on 1 line one moment, 2 lines the next moment, 3 lines the next moment, and even then 4. Use Alt Enter if you want to control the carriage return or the new lines in a cell. Next thing is the Format Painter. I click this cell, I go for my Format Painter, which is under Cut and Copy, and I paint, my mouse is now a paintbrush, I paint that look, yellow and blue, onto A25 up to A3. When I've chosen that, I let go, and it's painted that look onto those cells, and that's what they call the Format Painter. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's a lot of the common sort of formatting options that we have available to us in Excel. Stay tuned. Please like, please subscribe, and see you in the next video.